Let's talk about the 4 laws of habit formation. The first one, make it obvious. I think that sounds fairly straightforward. You need to make your habit obvious. So how do you do that? Step number 1, make note of the habits that you already do every day. Literally, take notes and observe yourself to say, okay, from morning, I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this, and so on and so forth. And then check which of these habits are good for me, which of these habits are bad for me in terms of the goal that I'm trying to achieve. And the next thing that you do, obviously after removing the habits that don't work for you, is intend to implement. You need to have a clear plan on how you're going to implement your habit. So studies have shown that intent to implement is much better than motivation when it comes to getting something done. So what does this mean? It means you can write it down right in your diary or wherever to say, for example, at 5 o'clock, or rather from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock, I will be da 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 da. If you're a student, from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock, I will be studying. If you are trying to get into exercising, from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock, I'll be exercising. Make that intent clear. And you need to make it as specific as possible. Do not just say, in the evening I will study, or in the evening I will exercise. Make it very specific so that you have a slot for it. And another thing that's very important is try to make it fall in line with the rest of the habits that you already have. If, let's say, you go to work, right? You'll say, okay, after work, I will exercise from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Make it become part of your normal habits instead of it standing in the way or feeling like it's an inconvenient thing to do. The third thing that you need to do in order to make it obvious is your environment. Try to design your environment such that it makes it easy for you to perform your habit. If you're trying to cut down on your calories, it won't help if your environment is a bakery, for example. You want to prime your environment such that it makes it easy for you to perform the habits that you want to implement. Second rule, make it attractive. A lot of the habits that we pick up tend to not have instant gratification. When you start exercising, you are not going to see the results overnight. So we have to find a way to make it worth doing today. How do we do that? It can be quite difficult. If I'm being completely honest with you, I wasn't completely convinced with the argument that he made here, but I think it's definitely something worth a try. He says what you should do is try to pair the habit that you do not like with one that you like. For example, you can say, after I study, I will play video games. So now this is this habit that you might not enjoy, which is studying. You could say, okay, after I do this, then I will do this thing that I enjoy. You could say, after I exercise, I will, hang out with my friends. Again, it's got to be that, but you need to make sure that the two habits that you pair are not counterproductive. So you can say, after I exercise, I'm going to eat cake. Because although some people would call that balance, it's not balance, so don't do that. So rule number 3, make it easy. How do we do this? Well, to say make it easy doesn't necessarily mean that somehow we're gonna make the habit itself easy. So exercise is still exercise, it's still difficult. It's about minimizing the effort. So how do we do this? Now, first step is friction reduction. What does this mean? It means try to reduce the effort that you have to put in order to perform your habit. A good example that he makes is, if you want to start exercising, wouldn't it be easier if the gym that you go to was on your way from work or on your way to work? It makes it easy for you to just go to the gym, because when you go home, you're just like, it's over there, let me just stop by the gym. As opposed to if the gym was on the opposite side of town or something, and then you have to go all the way there. That's what he means by friction reduction, basically. Now, the second thing is prime your environment. Now, what does he mean by this? He means if you want to study, if you're a student and you want to study, make sure that your environment or where you are going to study is always ready for that. How would you do this? Let's say you have a desk and table where you study. Make sure that anytime you're going to study, You prepare it in advance so that when you get there, it's ready for you to do what you need to do. Don't leave your desk messy and unorganized, because then before you study, you will probably think to yourself, then I have to organize this desk and all of that, which you don't want to do. You want to just get there and study. So prime your environment beforehand for what you know that you have to do. If you're the kind of person, maybe you exercise at home, try to put your gym clothes perhaps in a place where you can see them, so that when you see them, you're constantly reminded that, okay, at some point in the day, I need to exercise. Trust me, that one personally works for me. Another thing that he talks about is the 2-minute rule. What does this mean? Well, what he means by this is whatever habit you pick up, make sure that you only do it for 2 minutes when you start off. 2 minutes a day. That's it. Why? This is because this will be sustainable. Most of the time when we start something new, we tend to have this motivation and then we bite off more than we can chew. Then now from there, we start off wanting to keep up with that original pace. When I wanted to pick up meditation, I remember I wanted to start off with 15 minutes, sitting there for 15 minutes. That's day one, right? I'm very motivated, 15 minutes. Day two, I'm not so motivated. 15 minutes feels like an eternity. Now I want to stop. But if I just started with 2 minutes and then kept increasing the pace from there, 2 minutes is not that bad. You take 2 minutes, a couple of days later, you add another minute. Before you know it, you're doing the 15 minutes, no sweat. Start with 2 minutes. The final thing that he says is lock in good habits. What does he mean by that? He basically means do something today that might help you stick with the habit for the foreseeable future. A good example of this would be gym membership. You pay for the month, right? So you have one of two choices. You can either lose that money or just go to the gym so that you make sure that your money is not lost. That's what he means by lock in a good habit. Do these things that basically make it very difficult for you to wiggle out of the habit. And the final rule would be make it satisfying. This goes back to the whole instant gratification thing that we as humans are wired for, where we want gratification now. So how do you make it satisfying? Well, the way that you can do that, he says, is journaling or making a log. So every single day when you go to the gym, or every single time you've studied and you've studied for this certain period of time, you can log it up to say, okay, Monday I studied 2 hours, Tuesday I studied 5 hours. So that kind of thing, and that visual representation will most likely be motivating. It will make it difficult for you to want to break the streak. You'll just want to keep going and going and going and going, And he also says that if you do fall off, because you are probably going to fall off, you are going to at some point break the streak. What do you do then? Get right back on that horse immediately. It's okay to miss 1 day, but do not make it 2. Do not make it 3. That visual representation and other representations, you can actually give more examples of how you think this could be done in the comment section, and you could help somebody else. You never know. These are the 4 rules that he talks about. These are the 4 rules that I think would be really worth your time to try to implement. And in the comment section, we can actually discuss them even further, and you can say what else you think could be helpful. Oh, and before I go, there is something else that he talks about. He calls it inversion of the laws, which is basically how to counter bad habits. Because everything that we've talked about so far is about adapting new habits. So how do we counter the bad habits? It's basically inversion of these laws. So when he said make it easy, you try to make it difficult. When he says make it attractive, make it unattractive. So it's basically it's like doing the opposite of everything that I just told you for all the bad habits. I actually think he gives really good advice. Now, I would advise you to actually buy this book. If you can't afford it, I would say it could be a group purchase. I really think it's a good purchase. I really think it's worth having. Everything that I just gave you here is a summary, because I don't want to be sued for copyright. So I would say just buy it and read it. It's really a page turn. I think it's a really good read, and yeah.